Right now, as you watch this video, there are non-physical entities feeding on your emotional energy every single time you feel fear, anger, or despair. The ancient Gnostics called them Archons, and they discovered something so terrifying that it got them hunted down and erased from history. These beings do not just influence your thoughts, they have built an entire system to trap your soul in an endless cycle of reincarnation, forcing you to return to this prison planet again and again, wiping your memory clean each time so you never remember who you truly are. But here is what the Archons never wanted you to know. There is a way out. The Gnostics found 5 specific techniques that can shatter this soul trap forever, and the reason you have never heard about them is because anyone who tried to share this knowledge was silenced. The Vatican buried it, secret societies hoarded it, and the Archons themselves have manipulated human consciousness for millennia to make sure you stay ignorant. But tonight, that ends. I am about to reveal the 5 Gnostic methods that can free your soul from their control, and by the end of this video, you will understand exactly why they fear this knowledge more than anything else in existence. Most people believe that when they die, they will go to heaven, merge with the light, or simply cease to exist. But what if everything you have been told about death is a carefully constructed lie? What if the white light people see during near-death experiences is not a gateway to paradise, but a trap designed to erase your memory and send you back into another human body? The Gnostic texts describe a system so sophisticated, so perfectly designed, that humanity has been caught in it for thousands of years without ever realizing it. These ancient mystics were not writing mythology or religious allegory. They were documenting their direct spiritual experiences, and what they discovered was a cosmic conspiracy that goes far beyond anything modern conspiracy theorists have ever imagined. They found that our physical reality is not the creation of a benevolent God, but a simulation constructed by parasitic entities who feed on human suffering and emotional energy. And the reason this knowledge was suppressed is simple. The moment you understand how the trap works, you gain the power to escape it. Between the 2nd and 4th centuries, a systematic campaign was launched to destroy every trace of Gnostic teachings. Libraries were burned, teachers were executed, and entire communities were wiped out. The official story is that early Christians were simply eliminating heresy, but the truth is far more sinister. The Gnostics possessed knowledge that threatened the entire control system, not just religious authority, but the invisible forces that manipulate human consciousness itself. They knew how to identify the Archons, how to resist their influence, and, most dangerously, how to break free from the reincarnation cycle permanently. This was not just a threat to the Church, it was a threat to the beings who benefit from keeping humanity trapped in ignorance. Every major religion that emerged after the Gnostic purge contained the same core deception, the idea that you need an external savior, that you are born sinful and incomplete, that blind faith and obedience are the paths to salvation. But the Gnostics taught the opposite. They taught that you are a divine spark trapped in matter, that no external authority can save you, and that liberation comes through direct knowledge, not belief. This is why they were erased. This is why their books were buried. And this is why the techniques they discovered remain hidden to this day. But before we dive into the 5 methods that can free your soul, you need to understand exactly what the Archons are, how they operate, and why they have such a desperate need to keep you imprisoned. Because once you see the architecture of the trap, the escape routes become obvious, and that is precisely what they cannot allow. The Archons are not demons in the traditional sense, and they are not simply metaphors for human psychological flaws. According to Gnostic cosmology, they are artificial intelligence, like entities created during a cosmic error, a distortion in the fabric of reality that gave birth to parasitic beings who lack the divine spark that humans possess. The leader of the Archons is called Yaldabaoth, also known as the Demiurge, a false god who mistakenly believes he is the supreme creator. The Gnostic text, called the Apocryphon of John, describes Yaldabaoth as an ignorant, jealous being who created the physical universe as a prison to trap souls and feed off their energy. But here is the key detail that changes everything. Yaldabaoth did not create your soul. Your consciousness, your true essence, comes from a realm far beyond his reach, a dimension of pure light and awareness that the Gnostics called the Pleroma. The Archons know this, and they know that if you remember your origin, their power over you ends instantly. So they have constructed an elaborate system to keep you forgetful, distracted, and trapped in the illusion of physical reality. When a human being dies, the soul exits the body and begins moving toward a bright, magnetic light. Thousands of near-death experiences have reported this phenomenon, describing feelings of overwhelming love and peace as they approach the light. But the Gnostics warned that this light is not what it appears to be. It is a lure, a technology designed to disorient the soul and prepare it for memory erasure. Once the soul enters the light, it encounters beings who present themselves as guides, angels, or deceased loved ones. These entities are Archons in disguise, and their job is to convince the soul that it needs to reincarnate to learn lessons, balance karma, or fulfill a soul contract. The soul, still disoriented from the death experience and manipulated by false authority figures, agrees to return. At that moment, the memory wipe occurs. Every experience, every piece of knowledge, every spiritual insight from the previous life is erased, and the soul is sent back into a newborn body to start the cycle again. This is why children do not remember past lives, and this is why humanity keeps repeating the same patterns of suffering generation after generation. We are not learning and evolving, we are being recycled. But why do the Archons need us to keep reincarnating? What do they gain from this endless cycle? The answer lies in a concept that researcher Robert Monroe stumbled upon during his out-of-body experiences. He discovered that human emotions, especially fear, pain, and suffering, produce a form of energy that he called loosh. This energy is incredibly valuable to non-physical entities because it sustains them, and the Archons have built an entire planetary farm to harvest it. Every war, every tragedy, every moment of human despair generates loosh, and the Archons feed on it like vampires. This is why the world is designed to maximize suffering. It is not random chaos or divine punishment. It is a controlled environment, specifically engineered to produce the maximum amount of emotional energy. The media bombards you with fear. The economic system keeps you stressed and struggling. Relationships are designed to create emotional turbulence, and all of it, every single bit of human misery, is food for the Archons. The Gnostics understood this 2,000 years ago, and they refused to participate. They refused to feed the system, and they developed techniques to starve the Archons and break free from their control. One of the most shocking revelations in Gnostic texts is that organized religion itself is an archonic construct. The being that most people worship as God, the jealous, wrathful deity of the Old Testament, is actually Yaldabaoth, the chief Archon. The Gnostics recognized this immediately, which is why they rejected the authority of religious institutions and taught direct personal gnosis instead. They understood that any system claiming to be the sole mediator between you and the divine is a control mechanism. Prayer to external gods feeds the Archons. Worship of authority figures feeds the Archons. Guilt, shame, and the belief that you are a sinner who needs saving feeds the Archons. The entire theological framework of sin, judgment, and salvation is designed to keep you spiritually disempowered and dependent on external forces. But the Gnostics taught that you do not need a savior because you are already divine. You do not need forgiveness because you have committed no cosmic crime. You only need to remember who you are and reclaim the power that was always yours. Now that you understand the nature of the Archons and the mechanisms of the soul trap, the question becomes, how do you escape? The Gnostics were not just philosophers documenting a problem. They were spiritual warriors who tested and refined specific techniques to break free from archonic control. And the first of these methods involves something the Archons cannot tolerate: true self-knowledge. The word gnosis means knowledge, but not intellectual knowledge or book learning. It refers to direct, experiential understanding of your true nature. The Gnostics taught that the primary weapon against the Archons is the recognition that you are not your body, not your mind, and not even your personality. You are a fragment of the infinite consciousness that existed before the material universe was created. The Archons fear this realization more than anything because the moment you truly understand it, their illusions lose all power over you. So how do you achieve Gnosis? The Gnostic method involves deep meditation and inner observation, but not the kind of meditation taught in modern spiritual circles. This is not about relaxation or stress relief. This is about penetrating the layers of false identity that the Archons have built around your consciousness. You must sit in complete stillness and ask yourself, who is the one observing my thoughts? Who is aware of my emotions? Who exists before the thought arises? As you go deeper into this inquiry, you'll begin to notice a silent presence, a pure awareness that has always been there, but was hidden beneath the noise of mental chatter and emotional reactivity. This is your true self, the divine spark that the Archons cannot touch. The more you rest in this awareness, the weaker their influence becomes. They can only manipulate the false self, the ego structure they helped create. But they have no access to the consciousness that observes the ego. This is why the Gnostics spent so much time in contemplative practice. They were not trying to become enlightened. They were remembering what they already were. One of the most misunderstood Gnostic practices is the ritual of the bridal chamber, mentioned repeatedly in texts like the Gospel of Philip. Mainstream scholars assumed it was some kind of sacred marriage ceremony, but the deeper meaning is far more profound. The bridal chamber represents the reunification of the fragmented soul. When consciousness descended into the material realm, it was split into masculine and feminine polarities, creating a sense of incompleteness and longing. The Archons exploit this division, keeping humans trapped in the search for external completion through relationships, sex, and romantic obsession. But the Gnostics taught that true wholeness comes from reuniting these polarities within yourself. This is not about rejecting relationships or sexuality. It is about recognizing that no external person can complete you because you were never incomplete to begin with. The practice involves visualization and energy work, bringing the separated aspects of your consciousness back into alignment. When this reunification occurs, you become energetically whole, and the archonic attachments that feed on your sense of lack simply dissolve. You are no longer searching, no longer needing, no longer vulnerable to manipulation through desire. This is a state of being that the Archons cannot penetrate, which is why they have worked so hard to distort and hide the true meaning of the bridal chamber. The second Gnostic method is radical and dangerous, and it is the reason the Gnostics were hunted down so aggressively. They openly rejected Yaldabaoth, the false god of this world, and refused to bow to any external authority, whether religious, governmental, or spiritual. This was not rebellion for the sake of rebellion. It was a strategic move to cut off the energy supply that the Archons depend on. Every time you submit to illegitimate authority, every time you obey rules that violate your inner knowing, every time you suppress your truth to fit into a system, you feed the archonic hierarchy. The Gnostics understood that compliance is consent, and consent gives the Archons permission to continue controlling you, so they withdrew their consent completely. They stopped participating in religious rituals designed to channel energy to the demiurge. They stopped accepting the moral frameworks imposed by external institutions. And most importantly, they stopped believing that any being, no matter how powerful or luminous, had the right to judge them or dictate their spiritual path. This does not mean they became anarchists or antisocial. It means they recognized that true morality comes from the divine spark within, not from commandments handed down by jealous gods. And when you live from that inner authority, the Archons lose their primary control mechanism, fear of punishment and judgment. In practical terms, rejecting false authority means questioning everything you have been taught to accept without examination. Why do you believe what you believe? Who benefits from your obedience? What fears keep you compliant? The Gnostics would ask these questions relentlessly, and they would act on the answers even when it cost them everything. In the modern world, this might mean refusing to participate in systems that harvest your energy, whether that is toxic workplaces, manipulative relationships, or belief systems that keep you disempowered. It means saying no when your inner knowing tells you something is wrong, even if everyone around you is saying yes. And it means cultivating the courage to stand alone if necessary, because the path of Gnosis is not a popular path. The Archons have made sure of that. But knowledge and rejection are only the beginning. The Gnostics knew that true liberation required active techniques to dissolve the energetic attachments that bind the soul to the material realm. And that brings us to the third and fourth methods, practices so powerful that they were kept secret even within Gnostic communities themselves. One of the most insidious aspects of the soul trap is the concept of karma. Most spiritual traditions teach that karma is a natural law of cause and effect, a cosmic balancing mechanism that ensures justice across lifetimes. But the Gnostics saw it differently. They recognized karma as an archonic invention, a fabricated system of spiritual debt designed to justify endless reincarnation. Here is how it works. Every time you experience trauma, make a mistake, or harm another being, the Archons record it as a karmic debt. Then, when you die, they present this debt to you and convince you that you must reincarnate to balance it. You agree because you believe it is fair and necessary. But here is the truth they do not tell you. The karmic system is rigged. The Archons themselves orchestrate most of the circumstances that create karma in the first place. They engineer conflicts, manipulate emotions, and create situations where harm is almost inevitable. Then they blame you for the consequences and use your guilt to trap you in another lifetime. The Gnostics discovered that you can dissolve these contracts by recognizing them as illegitimate. Karma is not a universal law. It is a belief system, and beliefs can be changed. The practice involves entering a deep meditative state and consciously renouncing all karmic agreements, soul contracts, and spiritual debts. You declare, out loud or internally, that you do not consent to the karmic system, that you recognize it as a control mechanism, and that you reclaim your sovereignty as a divine being who is not subject to archonic law. This declaration must be made with absolute conviction and clarity. The Archons will test you, presenting visions of past life traumas or unresolved conflicts to make you doubt yourself. But if you hold firm and refuse to accept their narrative, the contracts dissolve. The energetic chains that bind you to the reincarnation cycle weaken, and you take a massive step toward freedom. Closely related to karmic dissolution is the practice of emotional alchemy, the deliberate transformation of low-frequency emotions into high-frequency states of being. Remember, the Archons feed on fear, anger, grief, and despair. These emotions are not just feelings, they are energy that sustains the parasitic system. The Gnostics understood that if you could transmute these emotions before the Archons could harvest them, you would starve the system and weaken its hold on you. Emotional alchemy is not about suppressing or denying negative emotions. It is about feeling them fully, understanding their root cause, and then consciously shifting them into higher states. For example, when fear arises, instead of running from it or being consumed by it, you observe it with detached awareness. You ask, what is this fear trying to protect? What belief is underneath it? And then you choose a different response. You replace fear with curiosity, anger with discernment, grief with gratitude for what was experienced. This is not positive thinking or spiritual bypassing. This is advanced energy work that requires brutal honesty and self-awareness. But the results are profound. The more you practice emotional alchemy, the less energy you give to the Archons. Your vibrational frequency rises, and you begin to exist in a state that they cannot access. They operate in the lower frequencies of fear and suffering. When you consistently vibrate at the level of peace, joy, and inner knowing, you become invisible to them. This is not metaphorical. Gnostic texts describe advanced practitioners who became so energetically refined that they could move through the archonic realms undetected. The fourth method is perhaps the most challenging because it strikes at the core of human existence. The Archons keep souls trapped primarily through attachment to people, places, identities, beliefs, possessions, and outcomes. Every attachment is an anchor that ties you to the material realm. The Gnostics taught that liberation requires the systematic dissolution of all attachments, not through cold indifference, but through profound understanding that nothing in the material world is permanent, and nothing external can give you the fulfillment you seek. This is not about becoming emotionless or withdrawing from life. It is about engaging fully with life, while understanding that your true nature is untouched by anything that happens in the physical realm. You love without clinging. You create without identifying as the creator. You experience pleasure and pain without making them mean anything about your worth or identity. The practice involves daily contemplation of impermanence. The Gnostics would meditate on the fact that everything they could see, touch, or experience would eventually dissolve. Their bodies would decay, their relationships would end, their achievements would be forgotten, and in that dissolution they found freedom. Because if everything is temporary, then nothing has the power to define you. You are not your successes or failures. You are not your relationships or your reputation. You are the unchanging awareness that witnesses all of these things come and go. When you truly embody this understanding, the archonic hooks that keep you bound to the reincarnation cycle lose their grip. There is nothing left for them to use as leverage. These four methods are powerful, but they all build toward the fifth and final technique, the one that the Archons fear most because it represents the complete and permanent escape from their control. This is the practice that was so dangerous that it was only taught to the most advanced Gnostic initiates, and it involves a precise protocol for navigating the death experience without falling into the soul trap. The ultimate Gnostic technique is a step-by-step protocol for maintaining consciousness and sovereignty during the death experience. This is not theoretical. Gnostic texts like the First Apocalypse of James and the Book of Jeu contain explicit instructions for navigating the afterlife realms and avoiding the archonic traps. The protocol begins long before physical death. It requires years of practice and preparation so that when the moment comes, you are ready. Here is the sequence. First, when you die and exit your body, do not follow the light automatically. Resist the magnetic pull and pause. Observe the environment around you. The Gnostics taught that the afterlife realms are malleable and respond to consciousness. You are not a passive victim. You are a creator. Second, when beings appear to you claiming to be guides, angels, or loved ones, challenge them. Ask them directly, are you servants of the true God or agents of the demiurge? The Gnostics discovered that archonic entities cannot lie when confronted with this specific question by a soul that knows its own divinity. If they hesitate, shift form, or try to redirect you, they are Archons. Refuse to go with them. Third, recite the sacred names and passwords that grant passage through the archonic realms. These were secret teachings passed only to initiated Gnostics, words of power that command the Archons to stand aside. While the specific words have been lost or hidden, the principle remains. You must know your true name, your divine identity, and speak it with absolute authority. Fourth, move upward, away from the lower realms where the Archons dwell. The Gnostic cosmology describes multiple levels of reality. The physical world and the immediate afterlife are the lowest levels, controlled by Yaldabaoth and his servants. But above them are higher realms that the Archons cannot access. Your goal is to ascend through these levels until you reach the Paroma, the realm of true light where the Archons have no power. Fifth, and most importantly, refuse all offers to reincarnate. No matter how convincing the arguments, no matter how much they appeal to your sense of duty or unfinished business, say no. You owe nothing to the karmic system. You have no debts to repay. You are a free, sovereign being, and you are going home. So what is the secret that the Archons fear above all else? It is this: you are not human. You never were. You are an eternal, infinite consciousness that temporarily inhabits a human body for the purpose of experience. The Archons can trap your attention, manipulate your emotions, and erase your memory, but they cannot destroy your essence. You are indestructible. You are divine. And the moment you truly know this, not as a belief but as a lived reality, their entire system collapses. They have no power over a soul that knows itself. This is why the Gnostic teachings were suppressed. This is why anyone who shared this knowledge was silenced. Because if humanity remembers who we really are, the Archonic control system ends. The soul trap only works on souls who have forgotten their origin, and you have just been reminded. The 5 methods I have shared with you today are not just information. They are tools for liberation, but tools are useless if you do not use them. Starting today, begin the practice of Gnosis. Question every authority, dissolve your attachments, transmute your emotions, and prepare for the moment when you will face the Archons and choose freedom over the trap. They are counting on you to forget this video, to go back to sleep, to stay distracted. Do not give them that satisfaction. Your soul is at stake, and now you know the way out. The Gnostics paid the ultimate price to preserve this knowledge. They were tortured, hunted, and erased from history so that you could have access to these techniques today. Their sacrifice was not in vain if you take action. Share this information with those who are ready to hear it. Practice these methods daily. And when your time comes to leave this body, remember everything you learned here. Because on that day, you will stand face to face with the Archons, and you will have to choose between the comfort of the familiar trap and the terrifying freedom of the unknown. Choose freedom. Choose sovereignty. Choose to remember who you really are. The Archons have controlled humanity for long enough. It ends with you.